She was about to marry a billionaire, but then she saw him. Her father: "Marry Emeka or you're no longer my daughter." But Elizabeth chose the Gateman instead. Her own family disowned her. She lost everything. They thought it was over, but then a mysterious old man appeared. What he told her about her grandmother will shock you. This isn't just a love story. It's a 50-year secret that changed everything. You will not believe what happens next. Watch till the end. I promise you've never heard anything like this. Hello family, before we start this intriguing story, we would like you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you will be notified once we drop new story. Also comment the time you are watching this and country you are watching from. The crystal chandelier sparkled above the mahogany dining table as Elizabeth sat frozen in her chair. Her father, Chief Henry Okafor, adjusted his expensive agbada and cleared his throat. "Elizabeth, I have wonderful news," he said, his voice echoing in their mansion's dining room in Victoria Island, Lagos. "Emeka Okonkwo has asked for your hand in marriage. The Okonkwo family owns half of Lagos's commercial properties. This union will secure our family's future forever." Elizabeth's fork clattered against her plate. Emeka Okonkwo, the cold, arrogant billionaire who treated people like objects. She had met him twice at business parties in Ikoyi, and both times he barely looked at her face, only commenting on how she would make a suitable wife for appearances. "Father, Elizabeth started, but he raised his hand. "The engagement party is next month. Mrs. Okonkwo is already planning it at the Eco Hotel. You should be grateful, Elizabeth. Not every girl gets such an opportunity." Elizabeth's mother, Funmi, nodded eagerly from across the table. "Oh darling, imagine the life you'll have. Private jets to Dubai, designer clothes from Milan, house girls attending to your every need." But Elizabeth's heart sank deeper with each word. She excused herself and ran to her room, tears streaming down her face. The next morning, Elizabeth walked through their estate gardens in Lekki, trying to clear her head. The hibiscus flowers her grandmother had planted years ago were blooming beautifully. She sat on the old stone bench, remembering happier times. "Miss Elizabeth, are you okay?" She looked up to see Musa, their gateman, approaching with concern in his eyes. He was carrying a small watering can, tending to the plants as he did every morning for the past 3 years. "Oh Musa, I'm fine," she lied, quickly wiping her tears. Musa sat on the grass nearby, respecting the distance but staying close enough to listen. "Sometimes talking helps. My grandmother in Ibadan always said keeping pain inside makes it grow bigger." Something about his gentle Yoruba accent made Elizabeth's walls crumble. She found herself telling him everything, about Emeka, about her father's plans, about feeling like a piece of property being sold. Musa listened without judgment. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Miss Elizabeth, I may just be a gateman from Ogun State, but I believe every person deserves to choose their own path. Your heart matters more than all the money in Lagos." 2 weeks later, Emeka Okonkwo came for dinner. Elizabeth dressed in a simple Ankara dress, while her parents wore their finest traditional attire. Emeka arrived in a black Range Rover, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than most people's yearly salary. He barely greeted Elizabeth, instead immediately discussing business with her father. "The merger will triple our profits," Emeka said, cutting his suya spiced beef. "Elizabeth will need to quit that silly teaching job in Mushin, of course. Okonkwo wives don't work. They attend charity galas and manage social events." Elizabeth's blood boiled. "That silly teaching job helps children learn to read." Emeka laughed coldly. "Children from poor families in the mainland will stay poor anyway. Why waste time on them?" "Because every child deserves a chance," Elizabeth replied firmly. "How naive," Emeka smirked. "You'll learn to think differently once we're married. I don't allow my wife to have such foolish ideas." The word allow hit Elizabeth like a slap. She excused herself, claiming a headache. That night, Elizabeth couldn't sleep. She walked to the garden again, finding peace under the starlit Lagos sky. Couldn't sleep either? Musa appeared, carrying a cup of hot zobo tea. "I made extra. Thought you might need some." As they sat together on the bench, Elizabeth realized something that made her heart race. Over the past months, Musa had been the only person who truly listened to her dreams, supported her teaching, and treated her like a human being rather than a trophy. "Musa," she whispered, "what if I told you I'm falling in love with someone completely wrong for me?" He turned to look at her, hope and fear mixing in his eyes. "I'd say, love is never wrong when it's real." "Even if that someone is you?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Musa's teacup trembled in his hands. "Elizabeth, I've loved you since the day I started working here. But I'm nobody. I'm just a poor man from Abeokuta with nothing to offer you. You offer me something Emeka never could, she said, taking his hand. You see me? The real me. Under the moonlight, surrounded by her grandmother's hibiscus flowers, Elizabeth made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, Elizabeth walked into the breakfast room where her parents sat with the Guardian newspaper and coffee. Mama, Papa, I need to tell you something important. Her father looked up from his business papers. If it's about the wedding dress, your mother has already chosen 3 options from Dubai. It's not about the dress, Elizabeth said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I'm not marrying Emeka Okonkwo. The newspaper fell from her father's hands. Her mother's coffee cup crashed to the floor. What did you say? Her father whispered. I said I'm not marrying Emeka. And I'm going to marry Musa instead. The silence that followed was deafening. Then her father exploded. Musa? The gateman? Have you lost your mind completely? A man who can't even afford a proper meal. I found my mind actually, Elizabeth replied calmly. I'm marrying someone who loves me for who I am, not what I represent. Her mother started crying. Elizabeth, please think about this. You'll have nothing. No money, no status, no future. People will laugh at us in church. I'll have love, Mama. Real love. Her father's face turned red with rage. If you marry that nobody from the village, you are no longer my daughter. I'll cut you off completely. No inheritance, no trust fund, nothing. You'll be as poor as the people you teach. Elizabeth felt her heart breaking, but she stood firm. Then I choose poverty over a lifetime of misery. She walked out of the room, leaving her parents in shocked silence, not knowing that this decision would lead to the most unexpected journey of her life. 2 weeks had passed since Elizabeth's shocking declaration, and the Okafor mansion felt like a battlefield. Chief Henry had hired security guards to watch Elizabeth's every move, but she refused to back down. You will not leave this house. Chief Henry shouted, pacing in his study. I've cancelled your bank cards, your phone line, everything. Elizabeth sat calmly in the chair across from his desk. You can lock me up, Papa, but you cannot lock up my heart. Your heart. Her mother Funmi burst into tears. What about our hearts? Do you know what people are saying about us? Mrs. Okonkwo won't even answer my calls. Every day brought new pressure. Relatives called to shame Elizabeth. Church members whispered when she passed. Even some of her teaching colleagues looked at her strangely. But every evening, when Musa finished his work and walked past her window while locking the gate, their eyes would meet. In those stolen moments, Elizabeth found the strength to continue. For 3 months, Elizabeth and Musa met secretly in the garden after midnight. They planned their future in whispered conversations under the hibiscus flowers. I've been saving money, Musa told her one night. Every naira I earn I keep aside. Soon I'll have enough for us to start somewhere. Where will we go? Elizabeth asked. I have a cousin in Ibadan who can help me find work. It's not much, but we can build a life there. Elizabeth had never lived outside Lagos, but the thought of being free with Musa made her heart sing. During this time, Elizabeth watched Musa carefully. She saw how he helped the other workers when they struggled, how he shared his lunch with the gardener's hungry children, how he never complained even when her father treated him harshly. Why do you love me? She asked him one night. Musa was quiet for a long moment. Because you see people's hearts, not their pockets. Because you teach poor children with the same passion rich teachers teach rich children. Because you are kind even when no one is watching. Everything changed when Emeka Okonkwo came to dinner again, this time with his mother and sisters. We've been patient enough, Mrs. Okonkwo announced. Elizabeth, you will marry Emeka next month or our families will have problems. What kind of problems? Elizabeth asked. Emeka smiled coldly. Your father owes my company 20 million naira. The loan expires next month. Unless we become family, I'll demand immediate payment. Elizabeth saw her father's face go pale. She had never known about this debt. You're blackmailing us, she whispered. I'm securing my investment, Emeka replied. Marry me and the debt disappears. Refuse and your family loses everything, the house, the business, everything. That night, Elizabeth couldn't sleep. She loved her parents despite everything. Could she let them lose everything for her happiness? The next morning, Elizabeth made her decision. She found Musa working in the garden. We have to leave. Tonight, she whispered urgently. What happened? Musa saw the fear in her eyes. Elizabeth quickly explained about the debt and Emeka's ultimatum. Elizabeth, maybe you should marry him, Musa said, his heart breaking. I cannot let your family suffer because of me. No. Elizabeth grabbed his hands. I would rather die than marry that man. If we leave tonight, my father will have to find another way to handle his debts. At least we'll be free. Musa was quiet for a long time. Finally he nodded. My cousin in Ibadan sent word yesterday. He found me work at a construction company. The pay is small but honest. Then we go to Ibadan tonight. At 2 a.m., Elizabeth crept out of the mansion with only a small bag of clothes. Musa waited by the back fence with his bicycle. They walked quietly through the dark streets of Lekki until they reached the main road where Musa's friend Taiwo waited with his old Honda car. You sure about this? Taiwo asked Elizabeth as they drove toward the motor park. I've never been more sure of anything, Elizabeth replied, holding Musa's hand tightly. At Ojota Motor Park, they bought tickets for the early morning bus to Ibadan. As they sat in the crowded waiting area, surrounded by market women and laborers beginning their day, Elizabeth felt a strange peace. Are you scared? Musa asked. Terrified, Elizabeth admitted, but also excited. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing my own path. When the bus finally arrived, old and rickety, Elizabeth climbed aboard without looking back. As Lagos disappeared behind them, she knew there was no turning back. But as they traveled toward their new life, Elizabeth didn't notice the black SUV that had been following them since they left Lekki. Inside, a man made a phone call. Sir, they're heading to Ibadan. Should we continue following? The voice on the other end was cold and calculating. Yes. Let them think they've escaped. Soon they'll learn that no one runs from Emeka Okonkwo. 6 months had passed since Elizabeth and Musa arrived in Ibadan. They lived in a small room behind Musa's cousin Akim's house in Makola area. Elizabeth had found work teaching at a local primary school, while Musa worked construction jobs around the city. Every morning, Elizabeth woke up at 5 a.m. to fetch water from the well. Her soft hands had grown calloused from washing clothes by hand and cooking on a kerosene stove. But as she watched Musa get ready for work, his face glowing with happiness, she knew she had made the right choice. The landlord says we can rent our own place next month, Musa said excitedly, counting their saved money. A small apartment in a Agodi area. Elizabeth smiled, but something had been bothering her. 3 times this week she had noticed the same man watching her school. A tall, dark man in expensive clothes who seemed out of place in their neighborhood. Musa, I think someone is watching us, she said quietly. Musa frowned. What do you mean? Before Elizabeth could answer, Akim burst into their room without knocking. Musa, Elizabeth, come quickly. There are people asking about you at the motor park. Elizabeth and Musa rushed to the window and saw 3 black SUVs parked outside Akim's compound. Men in dark suits were talking to neighbors, showing photographs. We have to run, Musa whispered, grabbing their small bag of belongings. But as they tried to slip out the back door, they found their path blocked. The tall man Elizabeth had been seeing stood there, no longer trying to hide. Mrs. Elizabeth Musa, he said with a slight smile. Or should I say Mrs. Elizabeth Okafor? Someone very important wants to see you. We're not going anywhere with you, Musa said, stepping protectively in front of Elizabeth. The man laughed. I'm afraid you don't have a choice. Mr. Emeka Okonkwo has been very patient, but his patience has run out. More men appeared, surrounding them. Elizabeth felt her heart sink. After 6 months of freedom, had Emeka finally found them? Elizabeth and Musa were driven back to Lagos in silence. But instead of going to Emeka's office or the police station, the SUVs stopped at a massive estate in Banana Island, even more luxurious than Elizabeth's family home. They were led into a magnificent sitting room with golden furniture and crystal decorations. Elizabeth had never seen such wealth, even in her privileged life. Ah, the young lovers have arrived. Elizabeth turned and gasped. An elderly man in his 70s sat in a wheelchair, wearing the finest agbada she had ever seen. His eyes were kind but sharp, and something about his face seemed familiar. Who are you? Elizabeth asked. The old man smiled. My name is Chief Adebola Adenuga. I am Nigeria's 3rd richest man. And I have been watching your story with great interest. Why? Musa asked suspiciously. Because, young man, you remind me of myself 50 years ago. Poor, hard-working, and deeply in love with a woman far above my station. Chief Adenuga wheeled his chair closer to them. You see, in 1975 I was a poor mechanic in Mushin. I fell in love with the daughter of a wealthy Lebanese businessman. Her name was Amira, and she was the most beautiful woman in Lagos. Elizabeth's eyes widened. There was something about this story. Her father rejected me completely. Said I was too poor, too black, too Nigerian for his precious daughter. But Amira loved me anyway. Chief Adenuga continued his story, his eyes growing distant with memory. Amira's father gave her an ultimatum: marry the Lebanese man he chose, or be disowned completely. Just like your father did to you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth felt chills running down her spine. But unlike you, Amira chose her family's wealth over love. She married the Lebanese man and moved to Dubai. I was heartbroken, but I promised myself something that day. The old man's voice grew stronger. I promised that I would become so rich, so powerful, that no father could ever reject me again. And I did. I built an empire from nothing. Oil, real estate, banks, everything. But why are you telling us this? Elizabeth asked, though part of her was beginning to understand. Chief Adenuga smiled, and suddenly Elizabeth saw it, the same kind eyes, the same gentle smile she had seen somewhere before. Because, my dear Elizabeth, Amira was your grandmother. The room spun around Elizabeth. She grabbed Musa's hand for support. My grandmother? But, her name was Adani? Adani was her Nigerian name, Chief Adenuga explained. But her birth name was Amira Lebanese. She was half Lebanese, half Yoruba. Your grandfather was the Lebanese man she married instead of me. Elizabeth felt like she couldn't breathe. Her grandmother, who had planted the hibiscus flowers, who had taught her about love and kindness, she had once faced the same choice Elizabeth did? But grandmother died when I was 12. She never told me. She regretted her choice every day of her life, Chief Adenuga said sadly. Before she died, she contacted me. Told me about you, her granddaughter who looked just like her. She made me promise to watch over you if you ever needed help. I don't understand, Musa said. If you're so rich, why didn't you help Elizabeth earlier? Chief Adenuga chuckled. Because I needed to know if she was truly different from her grandmother. I needed to see if she would choose love over money when tested. Elizabeth's mind was racing. You mean, all of this was a test? Not a test, my dear. A chance. You see, I never married after Amira rejected me. I built my empire, but I have no children, no heirs. For years I wondered, what if Amira had chosen differently? What kind of life would we have had? He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. When your grandmother told me about you, I saw a chance to rewrite our story. But first I had to know, would you choose love like I wanted Amira to choose? Or would you choose money like she did? Elizabeth opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were legal documents and a bank statement that made her gasp. This is impossible. 100 million naira, Chief Adenuga said quietly. Your inheritance from me. Plus a house in Victoria Island and shares in my companies. You passed the test, Elizabeth. You chose love over money, just like I wished your grandmother had done. Musa stared at the documents in shock. But sir, we don't need your money. We're happy as we are. Chief Adenuga's eyes filled with tears. And that, young man, is exactly why you deserve it. You see, I also have a confession. I am the silent partner who owns 60% of Emeka Okonkwo's company. When I heard he was pressuring you to marry him, I made sure your father's debt would be forgiven regardless of your choice. Elizabeth could barely speak. You controlled everything? Not controlled, child. Protected. I made sure that whatever choice you made, it would be free of financial pressure. Your father's business is safe. Emeka can no longer threaten your family. Tears streamed down Elizabeth's face as the full truth hit her. Her grandmother's lost love had become her guardian angel. There's one more thing, Chief Adenuga said, wheeling over to the window. I'm old and I'm sick. The doctors give me 6 months. I want to spend that time getting to know the granddaughter of the woman I never stopped loving. Will you let me be part of your family? Elizabeth looked at Musa, who nodded with tears in his eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Grandpa. 1 year later. Elizabeth and Musa stood in their new home, not the mansion Chief Adenuga had offered, but a comfortable house in Ikeja they had chosen together. Elizabeth still taught at a school, but now she had built a foundation to help poor children across Nigeria. Musa had started his own construction company, employing many young men from his village. Chief Adenuga, whom they now called Grandpa Bola, lived with them in his final months. He died peacefully in his sleep, holding a photo of Elizabeth's grandmother and smiling. At his funeral, Elizabeth learned that he had quietly helped hundreds of couples whose love had been challenged by family or society. The hibiscus flowers from her grandmother's garden were planted throughout his estate, a memorial to a love that was lost but never forgotten. As Elizabeth and Musa watched the sunset from their garden, Surrounded by blooming hibiscus flowers, she realized the truth. Real love doesn't just change your life, sometimes it changes the world. Moral lesson. True love is not about what you can gain but what you're willing to sacrifice. When you choose love over material things, the universe has a way of rewarding that choice in ways you never imagined. Sometimes the greatest treasures come not from what we pursue, but from the courage to follow our hearts despite the cost. Love, when it's real and selfless, creates a ripple effect that can heal old wounds and write new stories of hope for generations to come. Thank you for watching till the end. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to this channel for more interesting videos like this.